Hello everyone, and welcome back to another set of unsettling tales. In this narrative, you'll find dinner parties gone wrong, mysterious disappearances, eerie encounters in old buildings, and disturbing twists that prove even everyday life can hold deep shadows. To keep things clear, I've divided the events into different sections, but all are part of one continuous journey through fear and uncertainty. Sit back, if you dare, and let's begin. Story 1. My name. My name is Watson, and I live in a small, quiet town where everyone knows each other. I've always enjoyed hosting dinner parties, nothing too fancy. Just a chance to bring friends together for good food and conversation. The night that sparked this story started out as one of those calm gatherings. The summer air was warm, and I could smell the roasted chicken and freshly baked bread I'd been preparing all day. As the sun dipped below the horizon, my friends trickled in: Sarah, Mark, Lisa, John, and a new acquaintance named Tom, who had recently moved here. Tom was friendly but reserved, so I thought inviting him over might help him settle into our little community. The dinner itself went smoothly at first. We laughed and swapped stories while enjoying our meal. Tom, though quiet, seemed content. He smiled politely whenever people spoke to him, but mostly observed from the edge of our conversations. After dessert, we moved to the living room, continuing to chat. That was when Tom's behavior changed. He grew tense, hands fidgeting, gaze darting around the room. Without warning, he stood up, muttered something none of us could catch, and marched out the front door, slamming it behind him. We were left stunned, exchanging puzzled glances. Why had he left so abruptly? We managed to keep talking for a bit, but the atmosphere had turned uneasy. By the time everyone said their goodbyes, I was filled with nagging worry about Tom. The next day, I decided to check on him. His car was in the driveway, but no one answered when I knocked. Thinking maybe he just needed time alone, I went home. When days passed with no word, I grew more concerned and contacted the police. They investigated but found no clue as to where he might have gone. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Something in me refused to let it go. I kept replaying that dinner party moment, his sudden mood change, his quick exit. Had I overlooked a warning sign? As I dug into Tom's past, I learned that he had moved here after a difficult breakup and felt out of place. A lonely man looking for a fresh start. It pained me that perhaps we hadn't welcomed him enough. One evening, alone in my house, I heard faint rustling outside, like footsteps through the bushes. My heart raced. Peering into the darkness, I saw nothing, but the sound persisted on subsequent nights. Footsteps, low whispers, a creeping sense of being watched. Sleep became impossible. I felt as though Tom's disappearance had stirred something unseen. While searching Tom's house, with police permission, of course, I discovered an old journal. Inside were pages reflecting a troubled mind. He wrote about feeling haunted, always watched by some presence. The final entry, dated the night of my dinner party, read, "I can't escape it. It's always there, always waiting. I must leave before it's too late." Cold fear swept through me. What had Tom been running from? The police took his journal but made little progress. Weeks stretched into months. No new leads emerged. My friends tried to comfort me, but I remained fixated, plagued by the idea that Tom was out there, either trapped by fear or something worse. His disappearance cast a shadow over my once happy gatherings. Now, even a quiet night in my living room can turn my thoughts to Tom. To that final night, to the unanswered questions. I still hope one day the mystery will resolve, that he'll return or we'll learn what truly happened. Until then, his memory lingers, a silent ghost at every dinner party I host. Story 2. My son. A year before Tom vanished, there was another incident that rattled my home life. My son, Alex, was 20 and hanging out with friends one evening. I'd gone to bed early, half asleep when I heard the front door creak open. Alarmed, I hurried to the living room. There stood Alex's friend James. Holding Alex upright, my son was far too drunk to manage on his own. James apologized softly, explaining that Alex had gone overboard with drinks. We helped Alex upstairs, tucked him into bed, and James then left, saying he'd check on Alex the next day. Although concerned, I was thankful Alex was safely home. Months later, our small town was shaken by a horrifying crime reported on the evening news. A young man was found dead in a hotel room, evidently killed by someone who had checked in with him. The prime suspect's description matched James. The sketch on TV was shockingly like the young man who had helped Alex home that night. Terrified, I immediately called Alex. He saw the same news report. Neither of us wanted to believe James was involved in such a brutal act. We contacted the police, telling them everything we knew about James's visit and how he'd once brought Alex home safely. The details emerging were stomach-churning. James had apparently befriended the victim, encouraged him to get drunk, then checked them both into a hotel. In the dead of night, the victim was murdered, and James fled. The police launched a manhunt, which ended in James's capture in another state. Alex was shattered. He'd considered James a friend. "Mom, do you think I could have been next?" he asked. Eyes clouded with fear. My heart clenched. It was an awful thought, that the same friend who kindly returned him home might have harbored such darkness. James was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, but our peace was destroyed. Alex withdrew, guilt-stricken that he hadn't seen the potential for violence. I couldn't find the right words to comfort him because, deep down, I was just as shaken. Our home, once a place of security, felt overshadowed by that night's revelations. Even years later, the memory remains a harsh lesson. Sometimes evil hides behind a helpful smile. And we never know what storms lurk within the people we think we know. Story 3. The Abandoned House. One autumn, a few friends and I craved some excitement. The night was chilly, the full moon shining bright, so we decided on a spontaneous drive in the countryside. Alex, Sam, Jenny, and I piled into a car, windows down, music blasting, trading ghost stories in the moonlit dark. Eventually, we spoke of an old abandoned house on the outskirts of town. "We should go," Sam proposed, eyes gleaming. A tingle of fear went down my spine, but curiosity won out. The deeper we drove into rural roads, the narrower they became. Branches tangled overhead, forming eerie shapes in the moonlight. And then we saw it, the abandoned house. Large but sagging, windows broken, overgrown yard swallowing the porch. We parked at a distance, not wanting to be too obvious. A hush fell over us as we approached. The front door hung open, wood rotting. Inside, it smelled of dust and neglect. Old furniture lay strewn about. Floors creaked under each step. Jenny and I took the upstairs, while Alex and Sam stayed below. Every room looked like it had been left in a hurry. We found spider-webbed frames, tattered curtains, even a battered diary, its words too faded to read. Downstairs, we heard a loud crash, heart-pounding. We rushed to find Alex and Sam. The living room door, which had been open, was shut, and we hadn't heard it close. The boys stood in a small storage room, staring at a trapdoor in the floor that was slightly ajar. None of us had opened it. So who did? Against better judgment, we climbed down a rickety ladder into the basement. It was damp, cold. Our flashlights revealed dusty shelves and old jars. A faint flicker came from a lantern hanging near the back wall. Suddenly, footsteps echoed above us. Someone else was in the house. Fear stabbed my chest. We turned off our lights, listening as the unknown steps came closer. Then the trapdoor inched open. A gaunt figure with wild eyes slid down the ladder. He muttered angrily, searching the darkness. That was enough for us. We bolted for the ladder, adrenaline surging. One by one, we scrambled up, the man lunging at us. He grabbed Sam's ankle, but Sam kicked free, and we slammed the trapdoor shut. We didn't stop running until we were outside. Sprinting to our car, the engine roared, and we sped off into the night. None of us returned to that place. Even mentioning it later made us tremble. The thrill we'd sought turned into a horrifying brush with who knows what. And that memory stands as a reminder. Some stories about creepy old houses might be best left alone. Story 4. The Old Man. In my early 20s, I worked night shifts at a lonely gas station in New Hampshire. The routine was simple: ring up late-night customers, wipe counters, restock shelves. The station was isolated, so I'd often pass the hours reading or daydreaming. One midnight, a vintage car pulled up, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Out stepped an elderly man, dressed in a neat shirt and khakis, hair combed back. Something about his stance made me uneasy, but I greeted him politely. He wandered the aisles, eventually approaching the register with a bottle of water and gum. I scanned his items. As I handed him his change, he grabbed my wrist. His grip was icy. Leaning in, he rasped, "Hell is real, girl, and the devil already has his hand on you. Be careful." I froze in shock. His words rang ominously in the quiet store. Then, just as quickly, he let go and left. The darkness beyond the windows swallowed him up. My skin prickled, and I spent the rest of my shift battling a sense of doom. Why had he said that? Though time passed, I couldn't forget his warning. The night air felt heavier. Later, odd things started happening: flickering lights, strange whispers at the edges of my hearing. Once, I thought I felt an invisible hand on my shoulder. Every time, I remembered the old man's voice, as if he'd brought a curse with him. One evening, around the same late hour, the door opened. It was him again. Same neat clothes, same piercing gaze. He repeated the same line: "Hell is real, and the devil's hand is on you. Be careful." Then he vanished into the night once more. Police never found any sign of him. Nobody else at the station had seen him come or go. The words echoed in my mind like a prophecy. Even now, I'm not sure if he was truly some unhinged stranger or something more supernatural. But I never worked that shift again without looking over my shoulder, afraid his presence might reappear. Story 5. The Farmhouse. Not all my eerie stories happen in the dark of midnight. One summer, my wife Julian and I rented a lovely old farmhouse in the countryside for a relaxing family getaway with our 2 kids, Liam and Zoe. The yard was vast, with tall trees and even a small pool. At first, it was idyllic. On that first evening, we dined by the pool, the kids splashing and laughing. As the sky deepened, I heard a noise: crunch, crunch, like someone stepping on twigs just beyond our pool lights. Julian tried to reassure me, probably just an animal. Yet the sounds continued. Feeling uneasy, we gathered the kids and went inside. I locked every door, but tension filled the house. Later that night, around 11, a loud knock rattled the front door. I peered through the peephole and saw a man in a police uniform. "Open up, please. This is the police." Alarm bells went off in my mind. Why would the police be here at this hour, in the middle of nowhere? Cautiously, I asked through the door, "What's going on?" He said something about investigating suspicious activity, but his tone was off, more demanding than concerned. I called the local station to confirm. They had sent no one. Meanwhile, the man outside grew impatient, trying the doorknob. My heart pounded as I told Julian to hide with the kids. Real sirens eventually approached, and I saw the red and blue lights bounce across the dark yard. The fake officer fled into the woods. Actual police arrived moments later, discovered no sign of him or any accomplices, and recommended we leave for a hotel. It could have ended in tragedy if we'd blindly opened the door. That night changed me, forcing me to realize how quickly a peaceful vacation can flip into a nightmare. We never learned who that man was or what he wanted, but I never rent a remote place now without double-checking everything. Story 6. The Graveyard Shift. A friend of mine once worked a different gas station's graveyard shift. One night, it was calm, he was wiping counters, listening to the fridge's hum, when a disheveled woman rushed in, holding a little boy's hand. Her clothes were ripped, tears staining her face. The boy looked just as scared, clutching her side. She asked to use the phone. My friend gave it to her. Noticing her trembling hands, she spoke in hushed tones, seeming desperate to reach someone who could help. The tension in the store was palpable. She said she didn't feel safe outside and asked if they could stay. My friend agreed. About an hour later, the door flew open again. A furious man stormed in, eyes wild. He advanced on the woman, yelling, "There you are!" She hid behind the shelves, hugging her son. The man shoved aside displays, rage flaring in his voice. My friend threatened to call the police, but the man tried to snatch the phone away. A struggle ensued, but by some miracle, my friend managed to dial 911. The police arrived fast, tackling the man before he could reach the woman. Turns out she was fleeing domestic abuse. After the arrest, the woman thanked my friend, tears of relief shining in her eyes. Police helped her find a safe place. Though still shaken, my friend realized that night shifts can be more than quiet monotony. They can be lifelines for people in dire situations. He later said it was the scariest, yet most important, night he'd ever worked. Story 7. The Mysterious Extra Bed. In 2016, I had a surreal experience while living alone in a tiny apartment. One Saturday, exhausted from work, I fell into a deep sleep around 9 p.m. My dreams were bizarre, full of unsettling images. When I finally stirred, it was 3:33 a.m., the room dark and silent. Rubbing my eyes, I reached for my phone. That's when I noticed something impossible: an extra bed in my bedroom. Right beside mine, it had the same style, dark wooden frame, white sheets, but I only owned one bed. Worse, a shape lay under the sheet, still and silent. My blood turned cold. My apartment was locked up. How had someone snuck in another bed, let alone themselves? My pulse thundered. I switched on the lamp, the figure not reacting to the sudden light. Summoning what little courage I had, I approached. The sheet was thin, revealing a silhouette beneath it. When I reached out, the figure moved. I stumbled back, terror coiling in my gut. Slowly, it sat up, the sheet still over its head. Then it rose, impossibly tall, stepping toward me. I managed to whisper, "Who are you?" No response, just a menacing stillness. I bolted for the door, half expecting a hand to grab me. Once in the hallway, I realized how insane it all seemed. I called the police, who arrived promptly, but when they searched, they found nothing: no second bed, no intruder. The door and windows were locked from the inside. After they left, I checked every corner. My real bed was normal. Alone, I sat awake until dawn, lights blazing, mind spinning with questions. Had I hallucinated? Dreamed it? I eventually moved out, too uneasy to stay. Yet to this day, the memory remains chillingly clear. And sometimes at night I still think I hear soft breathing in an empty room. Story 8. The Abandoned School. I used to love exploring old abandoned buildings. Something about decayed hallways and ghostly silence fascinated me. A few years back, I convinced my friends, Tom, Lisa, and Sarah, to join me on an excursion to an abandoned school rumored to be haunted. We set out on a cloudy night. The building was indeed imposing: broken windows, boarded doors, vines creeping across the walls. We crawled in through a shattered window, flashlights slicing through the dust. Inside, the hush was almost suffocating. Desks lay overturned, a chalkboard scrawled with unreadable warnings. We moved cautiously, the floor creaking with each step. A loud bang from somewhere near the gym made us jump. We followed the sound, hearts pounding. The gym doors were shut. Carefully, Tom pushed one open. The space was huge, darkness swallowing most of it. Then, in the weak circle of our flashlights, we spotted a figure near the center. Its back faced us, shoulders rising as though it was breathing heavily. Suddenly, the figure turned, a face pale and sunken, eyes seemingly lifeless. It let out a shriek. We fled, adrenaline surging, sprinting back the way we'd come. We scrambled through the broken window and tumbled outside, not daring to look back. We never returned to that deserted school. The image of that ghastly figure's face and the echo of its scream followed us in nightmares. The thrill of exploring was replaced by the knowledge that sometimes the legends are right. And some places truly do hold horrors best left undiscovered. From dinner parties that ended in mystery, to harrowing nights in gas stations, to terrifying discoveries in deserted places, these stories show how quickly normal life can turn into a dark riddle. Each event left me or my friends change, a bit more cautious, a bit more aware that anyone can hide secrets, or that old buildings can hold living nightmares. If you found yourself uneasy or on edge, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories tinged with the uncanny. Feel free to share with friends who enjoyed Chilling Tale. Have you ever had a moment where everyday life took a sudden, alarming turn? Let us know in the comments. Until next time, stay safe, and remember, the strangest things can happen when you least expect it.